What do you reference on an ongoing basis as you go on throughout the day? What do you reference to make sure you know where you stand, who you are, what's happening? How do you assure self-preservation, safety? How do you assure that you maintain control over the situation, over your life? What are you referencing? This can be a very valuable undertaking. What do we reference to make sure things go the way we want them to in the next moment, in the next conversation? We reference thought. We reference time. We reference memories about similar situations, or at least situations that we perceive to be similar to what we expect to happen. But of course, you can see the built-in bias there. You can see the built-in presuppositions about how the next conversation or interaction is going to go. See, we think we know how things are already going to play out, and then we think we have control or influence over them. But what really happens is unconscious beliefs, presuppositions, influence our interactions. And so everything gets tainted by unconscious motivations when we do this, when we reference thoughts, we reference memory, when we have expectations and feel in control in this way. So what happens when we reference the distant past and the more recent past and the immediate past? It makes us feel as if we're in time, that there's a timeline on which we exist, and we're moving through time. And then we perceive that we can extend that timeline out into the future in a way that we can control our environment, our experiences. That's referencing thought. It seems like that's the only way to operate. It can seem like that's the only way to function. Like, how else would I function other than referencing the past and trying to plan for the future? But there's another option. The option is non-referencing, which means a recognition that there's nothing in the immediate that can be referenced in any meaningful way that's predictive in the way the mind looks at it or thinks about it. This seems quite radical, but in immediate experience, it's very simple and it's very easy to do. But it requires a certain kind of surrender. And often with that surrender, we're surrendering beliefs, expectations, the feeling that we're in control of everything all the time, but that control is rooted in fear. We have to let all that go, or it just gets let go of. And with that often comes grief, a sense of falling away, letting go, sadness. This is very typical in this process. So if there's non-referencing going on, what are the implications? What does that mean? Well, first of all, it means there's nobody referencing. There's no one on the subjective end, and there's nothing objective out there to reference or to be in relationship with. So there's no actual relationship. So does that mean everything is disconnected? Quite the opposite. It means nothing is disconnected. There's a profound and deep knowing of interconnection that's undeniable. But what is interconnected? Well, that's the funny part. Do we actually need to imagine objects and a subject to have this experience of interconnection? Well, it turns out we don't. We don't have to imagine solidity. We don't have to imagine discreteness. We don't have to imagine subjectivity. We can just experience the magic of appearance without having to reference it in any specific way. So non-referencing ends up being very intimate, very all-inclusive. When we don't reference from one perspective, in one sense, you could say we reference from all perspectives. Nothing is missed. The experience is infinite, but we don't have to imagine how it's infinite. It's just intuitively obvious. We don't have to confirm infinity. One simple experience, one simple appearance is already infinite. It contains all. Just like one dewdrop contains everything that's reflected within it. When we know intimately non-separation, then there's no need for distinction. There's no special object. There's no special experience or appearance, because every experience and every appearance has infinite dimension, infinite splendor. So this is non-referencing. Why is it non-referencing? Because there's no reference point. It feels like you're giving up something when you give up the subject, when you give up the I. But you're inheriting everything, because the reference point is not just here, it's over there. And it's everywhere in between. And it's from every perspective. And it's also from no perspective at all. So perspective itself is infinitely flexible, pliable. The fluctuation of perspective in this way is ecstatic, profoundly enjoyable. But nothing is held, nothing is referenced, nothing is kept or grasped onto. Nothing needs to be solidified. No position needs to be held. No reference point needs to be sought. No condition needs to be met. This is freedom.